Shout out to Bring Our Q, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this weekend on the undercard of Jai Opataya versus Jordan Thompson. We're going to be seeing Ellie Scotney, reigning IBF Super Bantamweight champion, take on seasoned journeywoman Laura Griffa of Argentina, fighter who's been around the block, a lot more rounds in the bank and a lot more pro fights than young Ellie Scotney. Laura sports a professional record of 20 wins with 8 losses, no draws.
1 knockout, only 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 28 professional bouts. To Ellie Scotney, who sports a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet. Ellie Scotney, a special fighter, a fighter who doesn't have a whole lot of fights, but what she does have is quality. It really is quality over quantity with Ellie Scotney, the fighters that she's faced so far. 2 former champions in Maria Cecilia Roman and Jorgelina Guanini. EBU champion of Spain, Mary Romero. She beat Mary and made it look easy.
More recently, reigning IBF champion of New Zealand, Shernika Johnson. Same principle.
She beat Shernika and made it look easy, which is saying a lot because Shernika's actually one of the better, more well-rounded fighters at Super Bantamweight.
This weekend, she's going to be facing Argentina's own very experienced Laura Griffa, who's coming off of 2 consecutive victories earlier this year. She was in action against Eliana Orechia back in March, won a decision.
Then Marianela Ramirez in April.
And what was their second fight, their rematch to their initial meeting in June of the previous year, Laura managed to win a majority decision in what was a 10-rounder.
In that way, she's already seen action 2 times this year. This will be her 3rd fight of this year, so she ain't got no ring rust to shake off.
Ellie was last in action not but 2 or 3 months ago in June, the Shernika Johnson fight that I just mentioned for what was Shernika's IBF title. Ellie won a points decision.
I half expected Ellie's next fight to be a unification match with Mayerlin Rivas, this division's WBA champion, also a matchroom fighter.
I imagine that if Ellie makes short work of Laura Griffa, perhaps they'll move her into another fight later on this year. We'll see what happens. Laura Griffa, she's got good physical dimensions for this weight. Good height, good length.
She's experienced.
Durable too, having shared the ring with the likes of Shotgun Shannon O'Connell, Nazarena Romero. These are strong punchers, very strong punchers.
Laura knows how to survive.
Though still missing a few key ingredients. She's got leaky defense.
Being 37 to Ellie Scotney, who's 25, Laura Griffa being, 12, 13 years older than Ellie, I don't think she's got the sharpness.
She's not going to have the same sharpness as Ellie Scotney. I think that goes without saying, the disparity in their ages, where they are in their careers, and she's not as put together a fighter that, while she is more experienced than Ellie, she doesn't have Ellie's ceiling. This is a fight that I think
this is going to be about inches.
Who measures the distance better, picks their punches better, delivers them better. I think that's Ellie.
I think Laura Griffa punches a bit wider than Ellie Scotney does. Ellie's punches are shorter, sharper,
more defensible, whereas Laura's punches, they are a bit wider. I think Laura is a serviceable fighter. You don't want to be asleep at the wheel with her, but Ellie's too good.
Easiest way to put it.
Accuracy and efficiency will be the name of the game here. Ellie Scotney on points is the likeliest outcome for the match. Ellie Scotney, she's got a lot of talent, a lot of boxing acumen, though not a lot of power. At the same time, Laura Griffa, she's never been stopped, and she's been in there with bigger punchers than Ellie.
So if 2 hard punchers like Shannon O'Connell and Nazarena Romero, if they couldn't knock out Laura, I don't think Ellie's going to knock out Laura, but I do think Ellie is going to outpoint her.
The way that Laura falls in and tucks behind that guard mid-range to inside, I could see Ellie Scotney getting off body shots just under the elbow or around it, splitting the guard up the middle with uppercuts. I could see Ellie Scotney exploiting
that Laura is slower than she is.
Many years older, and what is Ellie Scotney's first defense of her newly obtained IBF title. I expect Ellie Scotney to win on points. What she does after that,
your guess is as good as mine, but Ellie Scotney on points is the pick.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing,
and mixed martial arts, UFC head honcho Dana White caught wind of Stephen Espinoza's comments about how, in the last 6 months or so,
Showtime.
the people at Showtime Boxing, PBC, have held 3 separate events that brought in over $20 million at the gate. He was bragging, saying that Dana White's UFC has never done gates like that. And Dana White, he had something to say about that. He said, "That's exactly the type of response I would expect from that weasel, Espinoza. That scumbag has absolutely nothing to do with the success of Canelo, Ryan Garcia, and Terrence Crawford. Those guys are megastars, and they are the ones responsible for driving the gates in their fights. For him to even try and take any credit at all shows you exactly what an arrogant, delusional piece of shit that guy is. For this clown to talk about quote-unquote levels is hilarious. The production of the fights on Showtime is an embarrassment, and I have been saying that forever. He is a little guy with a big yap and is a complete phony. I'm not at all surprised this is the end for them. It should have come way sooner. Sorry to see you go, Weasel. Enjoy your retirement." It's important to note, it's important to remind people that even if Showtime ends up bowing out of boxing within the next 12 months or so, that doesn't mean it's the end of the PBC. Not necessarily, not if they can get another broadcast partner to give them an annual budget so that they can keep staging fights. Staging fights as part of a regular schedule of fights, not a bunch of pay-per-views. That's not the same thing. In any event, the end of Showtime Boxing doesn't mean the end of PBC Boxing. It's important to make that distinction, but Stephen Espinoza, he could be very much facing the end. Boxing Insider Ref, Elusive 2.0 stated, "Showtime Boxing has been in existence for 37 years. Programming which fell under the 10% of the Showtime Paramount subscriber base was going to be reviewed inherently. Although, interestingly, Showtime's 37-year-long history wasn't enough to warrant review. It fell below the 5% threshold, yes. Although it's worth considering that intangible factors surrounding that, 37 years of loyalty from a subscriber base, albeit dwindling, is still usually enough to consider review. However, that stage was bypassed. Very little weight was placed on that long-term loyalty standing."
Give me the short version.
Look, I remember a couple of years ago, the total number of subscribers for the Showtime platform was somewhere around 33 million.
This was years ago.
That number eventually dropped down to 29 to 28 million. So when you think about the overall number of subscribers versus how many of them actually take in a boxing match, raw numbers. If you've got, say, 28 to 29 million subscribers for your platform, and approximately 200,000 and 300,000 take in a boxing match, what percentage of the 29 million subscribers you've got is 200,000, 300,000?
Less than zero.
You heard what I said.
Zero.
If you've got on average 200,000 viewers for a boxing match, whether it's a regular boxing match or a pay-per-view, and your total number of subscribers is at or around 28 to 29 million, that accounts for less than 1%.
It's nothing.
And then you factor in what Paramount Global President Chris McCarthy said at the beginning of this year, that any content that accounts for less than 10% of the overall subscribership is going to have funds deviated away from that.
I mean, that's Showtime Boxing.
It's not hard to put it together. A Twitter account, a well-informed one, that goes by the name Fight Oracle stated, "Why is the Weasel bragging about Gates?" in reference to Stephen Espinoza. He's a TV suit, not a promoter. Why is he talking like he's a promoter?
When Stephen Espinoza told Dana White that in the last 6 months, they've produced 3 shows that have produced over $20 million at the gate.
It's what Fight Oracle's talking about.
I feel like Stephen Espinoza forgot what his job is.
His role. Fight Oracle continued, "This is how stupid the leadership at Bada is. They think this is important. How much of the gate flows to Paramount? Virtually zero. It's very confusing. The Weasel sometimes sounds like a TV suit and sometimes sounds like a PBC employee. Highly incompetent at both."
Make it make sense.
I believe that Stephen Espinoza, over time, grew too cozy, too comfortable with the people over there at the PBC. His role, his job in essence, is to oversee
what content they're providing and ensuring that that content delivers optimal viewing figures, optimal metrics to the Showtime platform. In essence, it's supposed to be Showtime that he's looking out for, not the PBC, not Al Heyman, and not his fighters. He's supposed to concern himself with what's best for the platform.
And I think that over time, and working so closely with the PBC and their fighters, their staff, I think that he lost sight of that to where he started behaving like he was a promoter.
I think that's how we got here. How we got to the point to where dwindling viewership may leave him on the unemployment line and the PBC in search of a new broadcast partner.
Remember, the end of Showtime Boxing does not necessarily mean the end of the PBC.
That's what I think happened. I think that Stefan took his eyes off the ball and forgot what his role was in all of this. You're not supposed to be playing pretend promoter, and you're not supposed to get your marching orders from Al. Al is supposed to get his marching orders from you, because their annual budget comes from you.
And in the best interest of the platform that employs you, which is Showtime, at times, you've got to crack the whip. You've got to lay down the law.
And I don't think that Stefan Espinoza did that. I think over time he grew too close to these people, so much so that he started behaving like he's part of the promotional team or the promotional outfit, when your job in all of this is quality control, ensuring that the PBC's content delivers big metrics and big ratings to the Showtime platform. You're supposed to be looking out for Showtime,
Not the PBC.
if you've been paying attention to the viewing figures that your average PBC show brings in, you'll realize that their worst numbers 4 years ago would be their best numbers today.
Some of their best numbers today.
5 years ago in 2018, Erislandy Lara versus Jarrett Hurd turned out to be the least watched main event for Showtime that entire calendar year, and what it brought in was approximately 500,000 viewers. It peaked at 521,000 viewers.
And that was their least watched fight 5 years ago. 5 years later, they'd be lucky if they could get any fight they're doing to bring in 500,000 views.
Don't let one or two box office fights fool you. Fights like Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis or Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. Your average Showtime boxing match brings in 100,000, maybe 200,000 views if it's lucky.
And that's on Stefan Espinoza's watch.
Stefan Espinoza isn't supposed to concern himself with what a fight does at the gate. His role as Showtime executive is ensuring long-term and sustained viewership, sustained subscribers for the people that employ him, which is Showtime. Viewing figures are more his department than gate revenue.
It's supposed to be.
And once again, I think he took his eyes off the ball. I think he got a little bit too cozy with the people at the PBC. He wanted to hang out with the cool kids.
When he was supposed to be cracking the whip and laying down the law, that if these viewing figures don't get better, there's gonna be trouble.
If some of these fat and happy fighters don't like it, they can hit the road.
See ya.
Matchmaking needs to be more ambitious. The matchmaking needs to be better so the viewing figures can be better. And if somebody doesn't like it, they can hit the road.
See ya.
And this is going to be lost on most content creators here on YouTube, or those who frequent boxing Twitter, those who think they know what's going on, think they understand.
But Ryan and Gervonta did over 1 million buys.
Yeah, Crawford and Spence did all right too, but maybe you're a day late and a dollar short.
Maybe.
Because the numbers have been dwindling, the audience has been dwindling for this content for so long that maybe this is too little, too late.
Maybe.
PBC might survive this. They might, but Stefan, I'm not so sure.
You think about the situation between Shakur S. Stevenson and Frank Martin, a situation that we've seen play out at least a couple of times the last couple of years.
Frank Martin saying to Shakur Stevenson, "That's some hush shit. You made it personal."
Situation featured a top-ranked fighter and a PBC fighter, and a fight between them did not materialize. We've seen that several times.
"That's some bitch-ass shit," said Martin during a recent interview with the Queens of the Ring Boxing Talk. "That's some hush shit. We're grown men."
Frank didn't like that Shakur Stevenson made his feelings known to the public on the $1 million worth of game podcast, calling him out, calling him a bitch.
And we've already covered the now defunct fight between them. That's not necessarily the centerpiece of this conversation. The centerpiece is that the PBC has a good number of guys at or around these weights. They've got Frank Martin, they've got Isaac Cruz,
Gervonta Davis, Rolly Romero, Subriel Matias, they've got bodies between 135 and 140.
They have fights that they can make independently, independent of anyone else. They have fights. So when a Shakur Stevenson fight does not materialize, if that's not a fight that Frank really wanted, and by all accounts, it isn't.
What's stopping you from making a Frank Martin versus Isaac Cruz fight?
At the end of the day, we could have easily made everything happen, but the shit he's talking, he made the shit personal, calling a man a bitch. I'm not cut like that.
That's what Frank Martin had to say about it in reference to Shakur Stevenson.
We've seen this same situation play out involving several different fighters, several different times over the years.
Just another chapter in the same book.
A PBC fighter not being too keen on fighting somebody else's fighter, in this instance, say a top-ranked fighter, that's par for the course.
It is.
We're used to that.
But even within the PBC, there are fights that they could be able to make, should be able to make, and they still don't.
Which highlights what I just talked about in my previous segment, that this is where the Showtime executive, the Showtime sports executive, Stephen Espinoza, is supposed to come in and crack the whip. It's been over a year's time since Isaac Cruz dropped a decision to Gervonta Davis. It's been over a year.
Within that year, you should have been able to stage Frank Martin versus Isaac Cruz as part of your regular schedule of fights, not a pay-per-view because it's not pay-per-view worthy.
This is what I'm talking about. Before it gets to the point to where Frank Martin is in the thick of a PR nightmare due to a fight that he avoided with Shakur, you should have staged the fight between him and Isaac Cruz before that. In between the time Isaac lost to Gervonta, built himself back up, and ended up here.
Instead, you've got Isaac fighting a bunch of nobodies, Frank fighting a bunch of nobodies.
And what's Gervonta about to do? What's stopping him from fighting Subriel Matias at 140 for his IBF title?
Stopping him. Oh, what?
Subriel's not popular enough, but Isaac Cruz was, Rolly Romero was. Are you joking?
Huh?
Mario Barrios?
You kidding me?
They've got enough bodies right there in between 135 and 140 that the matchmaking could be better, and it should be better, but it still isn't. And this highlights the lack of leadership from Stephen Espinoza. This is just one example, a recent one.
Don't tell me that Stephen couldn't have done nothing about that, or situations like that.
When they were both featherweight champions reigning parallel to each other, why didn't you guys ever make the Gary Russell versus Leo Santa Cruz fight? Why didn't you crack the whip on that? You're telling me there was nothing Stephen could do. There was nothing he could do in that situation to make that fight happen as part of a regular schedule of fights.
Bullshit.
It's bullshit. He don't work for the PBC. He don't get his check from them.
They get their annual budget from him. Rather, his employer, Showtime.
So in a situation where you see that your numbers are dipping, viewership is down, ratings are down,
You're supposed to crack the whip.
you want to keep your job, you better do your job.
You're not supposed to be taking your marching orders from Al. In all actuality, he's supposed to be taking his marching orders from you.
Edwin De Los Santos upset the apple cart for Rayo over a year ago. You had plenty of time to put him in a meaningful fight. And these are the kinds of oversights that I'm talking about.
Gotta go to top rank to be in a meaningful fight?
Guys weren't using him for nothing, so I guess so. I mean, maybe the PBC is having a good year. Maybe they are.
But it took them too long.
I can go on for several segments and several videos about what Stephen should have and could have done to avert disaster.
This has been going on for years.